You can walk into almost any store today, big box retailers, discount shops, gas stations, and you'll notice something unsettling if you pay attention. The people under the most financial pressure are often spending money on things that quietly lock them into that pressure. This isn't about enjoying life or buying something nice once in a while. It's about repeated habits that drain future opportunity dollar by dollar. Most people never stop to think about what actually happens to their money after they spend it. They look at whether they can afford the payment, whether it fits into this month's budget, whether it feels justified right now. What they rarely consider is whether the thing they are buying is quietly losing value faster than it is providing usefulness. That difference matters more than almost anything else in personal finance, because wealth is built by owning things that either hold their value or help produce more value over time. When you repeatedly buy things that do the opposite, you are working against yourself no matter how hard you earn. Many of the most common purchases fall into this trap. They look impressive, feel rewarding, and signal progress, but the moment the transaction is complete, their value begins to shrink. The usefulness stays roughly the same, but the financial cost keeps compounding. You pay for the item once, then you pay again through depreciation, maintenance, financing costs, and lost opportunity. That lost opportunity is the part most people never calculate. Money spent on something that rapidly loses value is money that can no longer grow, earn, or protect you in the future. The problem isn't buying things you enjoy or need. The problem is paying a premium for newness, status, or convenience when those qualities disappear almost immediately. New products are often priced for emotion, not durability. The excitement wears off quickly, but the financial damage lasts for years. When people focus only on how something makes them feel today, they ignore what it quietly takes from them tomorrow. Over time, those decisions stack on top of each other and create a life that feels busy, expensive, and financially fragile. Value works differently. True value doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention or admiration. It simply performs its job reliably while allowing your money to remain productive elsewhere. Something that holds its value gives you options. Something that produces value gives you leverage. Something that loses value rapidly does neither. It traps money in an asset that cannot help you later and cannot easily be turned back into cash without a loss. This is why wealthy thinking tends to be boring. It avoids the latest version, the fastest upgrade, the newest release. It waits. It lets other people pay for early mistakes, marketing costs, and trend-driven pricing. By the time it steps in, the price reflects reality rather than hype. The usefulness remains, but the financial penalty is gone. That gap between price and usefulness is where progress is made. People often confuse affordability with wisdom. Just because you can make the payment does not mean the purchase makes sense. Payments hide the true cost. They stretch a bad decision across many months so it feels manageable, even reasonable. But the total cost, combined with the value loss, reveals the truth. You are committing future income to something that will be worth less every day while demanding more effort to maintain. Every dollar has potential. It can either be locked into something shrinking or placed somewhere that grows, protects, or supports future choices. When you repeatedly choose shrinking assets, you reduce your margin for error. Emergencies feel heavier. Opportunities feel out of reach. Stress increases not because income is too low, but because money is tied up in the wrong places. Changing this habit doesn't require sacrifice. It requires patience, waiting, buying used, choosing function over image, and separating desire from value all shift the direction of your finances. When you stop buying things that lose value faster than they create usefulness, your money stays alive. It remains flexible. It stays available for investments, savings, and decisions that improve your position over time. Short-term comfort is one of the most expensive things people buy, and the cost rarely shows up on a receipt. It shows up years later in the form of stress, limited choices, and the feeling that no matter how hard you work, you are not moving forward. Trading long-term freedom for immediate comfort often feels harmless in the moment because the reward is instant and the consequence is delayed. But money is patient, and it remembers every decision you make with it. Comfort is easy to justify. You work hard, you're tired, and you want life to feel easier right now. So you choose convenience over planning, payments over patience, and upgrades over stability. None of these decisions feel reckless on their own. In fact, they often feel deserved. The danger is not the single choice, but the pattern it creates. When comfort becomes the default response to stress or fatigue, it quietly replaces intention. Over time, comfort turns into obligation, and obligation turns into dependency. Long-term freedom is built on the opposite behavior. It requires doing slightly uncomfortable things today so that tomorrow becomes easier. It means saying no when something would feel good now but create pressure later. It means accepting a little inconvenience in exchange for control. Freedom doesn't come from having everything you want. It comes from needing very little and owning your time, your income, and your decisions. Many people think freedom arrives when income increases, but income alone does not create freedom. If every raise is followed by higher spending, new subscriptions, bigger payments, and upgraded lifestyles, nothing changes except the size of the cage. You earn more, but you owe more. You work harder, but you have less room to breathe. Comfort expands to absorb every extra dollar, leaving no space for savings, investing, or choice. Immediate comfort is often marketed as self-care, but true care is about sustainability. Financial freedom means being able to handle emergencies without panic, make career decisions without desperation, and say no to situations that drain you. Those abilities come from reserves, not rewards. They come from delayed gratification, not instant relief. When you prioritize comfort first, freedom becomes something you plan for later, and later keeps getting pushed further away. Debt is one of the clearest examples of this trade-off. Debt allows you to feel comfortable today while committing future income to past decisions. It reduces flexibility and increases stress even when the monthly payment seems manageable. Each obligation narrows your options. Over time, you stop choosing what's best for you and start choosing what keeps the system running. That is not freedom. That is maintenance. The discipline required to protect long-term freedom is quiet and unglamorous. It looks like driving a reliable car instead of an impressive one, cooking at home when it would be easier to order out, and sticking with what works instead of constantly upgrading. These choices don't impress anyone, but they build something far more valuable than approval. They build independence. Every dollar spent on comfort is a dollar that cannot buy time later. Time is the real currency of freedom. The ability to step away, to change direction, to wait for the right opportunity, all depend on how much financial pressure you carry. When pressure is low, options multiply. When pressure is high, even good opportunities feel risky. The most successful people understand that comfort is temporary, but freedom compounds. They design their lives so that future decisions are easier, not harder. They accept short-term inconvenience in exchange for long-term control. Once you recognize this trade-off, your spending decisions begin to change naturally because you stop asking what feels best now and start asking what protects your future self. Hope is powerful, but when it replaces logic in financial decisions, it becomes dangerous. Purchases driven by hope are usually sold as shortcuts, lucky breaks, or once-in-a-lifetime chances. They promise escape without effort and reward without patience. That promise is what makes them appealing, especially to people who feel stuck or overwhelmed. The problem is that money does not respond to hope. It responds to math, time, and consistency. And when those are ignored, the outcome is almost always predictable. Hope-based spending focuses on what might happen instead of what is likely to happen. It encourages people to overestimate rare outcomes and underestimate common losses. A small chance of a big reward feels more exciting than a large chance of a modest gain, even when the modest gain is far more valuable over time. This is why so many financial traps are built around stories instead of numbers. Stories create emotion, and emotion silences calculation. When math is removed from the decision, discipline disappears with it. You stop measuring risk, cost, and probability, and you start measuring feelings. The purchase feels justified because it carries possibility. That possibility becomes the product, not the outcome. Over time, repeated hope-based decisions drain money in small, steady amounts, while nothing meaningful replaces it. The loss is slow enough to ignore, but consistent enough to be damaging. Wealth is built by stacking probabilities in your favor, not by chasing unlikely events. Math-based decisions accept reality as it is, not as it could be in the best-case scenario. They rely on averages, long-term trends, and historical behavior. They are boring, predictable, and effective. They do not offer emotional highs, but they provide stability, which is far more valuable. People who depend on hope often feel like they are trying, even when they are not making progress. Buying a chance feels like action. It feels better than doing nothing. But real action is not always exciting. Real action looks like saving consistently, investing slowly, reducing risk, and repeating the same unremarkable behaviors for years. These actions don't promise sudden transformation, but they quietly deliver it. Hope-driven purchases also shift responsibility away from the buyer. If the outcome fails, it feels like bad luck instead of a bad decision. That makes it easier to repeat the behavior. Math-driven decisions, on the other hand, force accountability. The expectations are clear, the risks are known, and the results can be measured. When something doesn't work, you adjust rather than wish. There is nothing wrong with optimism. Optimism paired with discipline creates momentum. But optimism without structure leads to dependence on outcomes you cannot control. Financial strength comes from focusing on inputs you can control: how much you save, how consistently you invest, how much risk you take, and how long you stay committed. Hope does not control any of those variables. Many people believe they will start making rational decisions once their situation improves. In reality, improvement comes after rational decisions begin. Waiting for a lucky break delays the habits that actually change outcomes. When you remove hope from your purchases and replace it with math, you gain clarity. You stop asking what could happen and start asking what usually happens. Math does not care how badly you want something to work. It does not respond to effort or intention. It simply reflects reality over time. When you align your spending with that reality, your progress becomes steady instead of fragile. You stop relying on chance and start relying on process, and that shift alone changes the direction of your financial life. Convenience often disguises itself as efficiency, but in personal finance it usually functions as a tax on impatience. Payments that promise to make life easier today frequently make life harder for years afterward. They remove friction in the moment while quietly installing long-term obligations in the background. What feels like simplification is often just delayed complexity, and once those payments become routine, they start to feel unavoidable. Permanent debt rarely begins with a single reckless decision. It grows from small, reasonable choices that prioritize speed and ease over structure. A payment here replaces planning. A service there replaces effort. Over time, these choices stack into a system where money leaves your account automatically before you have a chance to direct it. When obligations run your cash flow, intention disappears and progress slows without anyone noticing right away. Convenience-based payments are dangerous because they shrink awareness. When everything is broken into monthly amounts, the true cost becomes invisible. You stop thinking in totals and start thinking in comfort. As long as the payment fits, the decision feels acceptable. But fitting is not the same as working. Money committed to convenience cannot be redirected towards savings, investing, or reducing risk. It is locked into maintaining the present instead of improving the future. Debt tied to convenience is especially harmful because it offers nothing lasting in return. Once the service ends or the item wears out, the payments may remain. You are left with obligations but no asset, no growth, and no increased capability. This creates a cycle where income is constantly spoken for, forcing reliance on the same shortcuts that caused the problem in the first place. Convenience also encourages frequency. When something is easy to access, it is easier to overuse. Small recurring payments feel harmless because they are familiar. Familiarity lowers resistance, and low resistance leads to accumulation. Eventually, you are supporting a lifestyle that requires constant income just to stay in place. At that point, even a small disruption feels catastrophic because there is no margin. The alternative is intentional friction. Friction forces thought. It slows decisions just enough to allow math to enter the conversation. Planning meals instead of buying them, saving before spending, and paying up front instead of monthly all introduce a pause that protects your future self. That pause is where control lives. It allows you to choose rather than react. Permanent debt thrives on urgency. It convinces you that you cannot wait, cannot plan, and cannot manage without assistance. In reality, most situations improve when you slow down. Waiting, preparing, and simplifying reduce the need for payments altogether. When you remove unnecessary convenience, you often discover that your life does not become harder. It becomes quieter and more predictable. Eliminating convenience-based debt is not about denying yourself comfort. It is about deciding which comforts are worth their cost. True comfort comes from stability, not speed. It comes from knowing your income exceeds your obligations and that your future is not already spent. When payments decrease, flexibility increases, and flexibility is the foundation of security. Every payment represents a decision you made in the past. When too many of those decisions were driven by convenience, your present becomes crowded with obligations. Reversing that process takes time, but it starts with awareness. When you begin questioning whether ease today is creating pressure tomorrow, your spending changes naturally. Convenience stops being the goal, and freedom takes its place. Insurance is meant to protect you from financial ruin, not to shield you from minor inconvenience. When that line becomes blurred, money starts flowing toward products that feel responsible but quietly work against long-term progress. Small insurance plans, protection packages, and extended warranties are designed to make you feel safe, even when the risk they cover is insignificant. The cost of that false security accumulates slowly, which is why so many people accept it without question. The logic behind insuring small items sounds reasonable at first. If something breaks, you won't have to pay for it all at once. What's often ignored is how rarely these events actually happen and how much you pay over time to protect against them. Most small items either fail early, when they are already covered, or last long enough that the insurance expires unused. In both cases, the premiums are gone and nothing was gained. Companies that sell these plans understand probability very well. They price coverage so that, on average, they collect far more than they pay out. This doesn't make them dishonest, it makes them profitable. The problem arises when individuals treat these products as necessities instead of optional expenses. By insuring small risks repeatedly, you guarantee a loss over time. The losses are small individually, but relentless in total. True financial safety does not come from eliminating every possible inconvenience. It comes from building reserves. When you save the money you would have spent on small insurance policies, you create your own protection. That money stays under your control. If nothing goes wrong, it remains yours. If something does go wrong, you use it directly without deductibles, exclusions, or delays. Insuring everything trains your mind to fear minor setbacks. It creates dependence on external solutions instead of internal strength. Self-insurance builds confidence because you know you can handle routine problems. This confidence reduces stress and leads to better decisions. When you are not afraid of small losses, you can focus on avoiding the big ones. The purpose of insurance is to transfer risk that would otherwise be devastating. A house fire, a major accident, a serious illness, or the loss of income that supports others can erase years of progress in a moment. These risks are unpredictable and too large for most people to absorb on their own. That is where insurance belongs. Outside of those scenarios, paying premiums often creates more harm than protection. Small insurance products also encourage careless spending. When people believe items are protected, they worry less about repair, maintenance, or replacement planning. The insurance becomes a crutch rather than a safeguard. Over time, this mindset leads to higher costs and less responsibility, further eroding financial discipline. Self-insuring small risks requires patience and consistency. It means setting aside money regularly and resisting the urge to spend it elsewhere. It means accepting that sometimes you will have to pay for a repair or replacement out of pocket. But those moments are temporary, while the habit of saving is permanent. When you stop paying to insure trivial losses, your cash flow improves immediately. That extra money can strengthen emergency funds, reduce debt, or be invested for growth. Each of these outcomes increases resilience far more effectively than any warranty plan ever could. Financial strength is not about avoiding every setback. It is about being prepared to absorb them without panic. The more you rely on self-insurance for small risks, the clearer your priorities become. You start distinguishing between inconvenience and catastrophe, between discomfort and danger. This clarity leads to smarter choices across every area of money management. Instead of buying peace of mind, you build it yourself. Most people think of money as something that appears and disappears, something meant to be used and then forgotten. They earn it, spend it, and move on to the next paycheck without ever asking what that money could have done if it had been given a job. When money is treated as a disposable reward, it works for a moment and then vanishes. When it is treated as a worker, it keeps producing long after the effort to earn it is over. Every dollar has potential energy. The moment it enters your life, it can either be consumed or assigned. Consumption feels good immediately, which is why it is so tempting. Assignment requires patience, which is why it is rare. The difference between financial struggle and financial progress is often nothing more than the decision to give money a role beyond today. Dollars without direction disappear, dollars with purpose multiply. A future-focused mindset asks a different question before spending. Instead of asking whether something is affordable, it asks whether this dollar could do more elsewhere. That shift changes everything. A dollar spent is gone forever. A dollar invested, saved, or used to reduce risk continues working quietly in the background. Over time, those working dollars begin to outnumber the ones you actively earn, and that is when momentum appears. Money works best when it is consistent. Small amounts assigned regularly outperform large amounts assigned sporadically. This is because time, not intensity, does the heavy lifting. When you repeatedly direct money toward productive uses, it compounds not only in value but in habit. The act of assigning money becomes automatic, and spending becomes deliberate rather than impulsive. Treating money as a future employee also forces discipline. Employees require structure, direction, and patience before they become productive. Money is no different. It needs time to grow, space to operate, and protection from unnecessary risk. When you give it those conditions, it rewards you with flexibility and security later. When you deny it those conditions, it demands constant replacement through more work. Many people wait until they earn more before giving money a job. This is backwards. The habit must come first. A small income managed intentionally creates more progress than a large income managed carelessly. When every dollar has an assignment, waste becomes visible. When waste becomes visible, behavior changes naturally. Working money reduces dependence on future effort. It creates income streams, cushions emergencies, and provides options when life changes. Instead of reacting to problems with panic, you respond with preparation. This shift lowers stress and increases confidence because your financial life is no longer balanced on the next paycheck alone. Assigning money to the future does not mean denying enjoyment. It means choosing enjoyment intentionally rather than automatically. There is room for comfort, generosity, and pleasure, but they come after responsibility, not before it. When spending is intentional, enjoyment increases because it is no longer followed by regret. Over time, the relationship with money becomes less emotional and more strategic. Decisions are guided by outcomes rather than impulses. Each dollar sent to work strengthens the next one. This creates a system that grows stronger even when income stays the same. The people who build lasting wealth do not do so because they earn extraordinary amounts. They do so because they treat money with respect and purpose. They understand that money is a tool, not a trophy, and tools are meant to be used wisely. If you want your financial life to change, start assigning every dollar a job the moment it arrives. Decide in advance which dollars will work for your future and which are allowed to be spent today. Protect the workers, be patient with their progress, and give them time to compound. When you stop treating money as something to be consumed and start treating it as something that serves you, the results become inevitable.